Is there a place and time where logic breaks down and wonderment begins? Could that be somewhere or sometime along an indefinable line between the reasonable and the highly unlikely? Join us on a journey into the improbable.
Today's story, episode 233, Simulation, read by Mitchel Tew, opening and closing theme by Matthew Erdmann. Somewhere and sometime, it might not be possible to know what is real. The first thing Annisa noticed was the quality of the light. It was too harsh, and the colors too bright, as if the mist she had been living in her whole life had just evaporated. "Annisa, how are you feeling?" Dr. Brooks asked as she leaned in to examine Annisa's eyes. "That wasn't as bad as you feared, right?" Annisa blinked at her doctor, trying to get the image to soften. Despite the fact that Brooks had known her since she was born, she had never really seen the doctor before. Brooks was younger and taller than Annisa had expected. Her curly hair, until that moment, had been a fuzzy halo. Now, Annisa could make out individual strands. Annisa's cataracts could not be removed until her eyes stopped growing. So, she had spent the first 19 years of her life in a dimly lit world filled with indistinct shapes. People's faces were impressionistic blurs. Houses, streets, and trees blended together, which made it challenging to navigate the world. So, Annisa had limited her universe to a few square blocks, which she knew well enough to negotiate with her clouded eyes. She had never even been on a plane until yesterday. Now, the world assaulted her with garish colors, sharp edges, and details too intense to take in. It all gave her a headache. "I'm adjusting," Annisa admitted, closing her eyes again. "I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, and the room feels cold." She reached up to touch her head and was greeted by stubble. "What happened to my hair?" "We discovered a problem with your optic nerves and had to operate," Dr. Brooks explained. "It went well. There's nothing to worry about. How's your vision?" "I'm not sure. Everything is so intense, and the details. There's too much. It hurts when I try to focus on something. It's hard to explain." Annisa tried squinting. Although she had dreamed about this moment for years, she hadn't known what to expect. But being overwhelmed was a surprise. "I'm going to have a specialist take a look," Dr. Brooks explained. "They'll perform a few tests, then we'll know for sure. At worst, you might need glasses." For some reason, the doctor's voice sounded too crisp and close. Had they done something to her hearing as well, she wondered. "So, when can I go home?" Brooks hesitated. "We want to keep you under observation for a while, then run you through a special vision therapy program." "How long will that take?" said Annisa, trying to quell the sensations. "I just want to get back to my life and move on." "We all want that for you. You need to give your eyes and brain time to adjust." It was almost 2 weeks before Annisa found herself standing in an office filled with inviting armchairs, waiting for her appointment with, well, she had lost track of who she was supposed to be seeing today. Like all the offices she had been in, the windows were shuttered, blocking the view of the world beyond. She had insisted she would be fine if they were opened, that her mind could now process the extra information. But, to her frustration, everyone had claimed it was too soon, and she should be more patient. Annisa was fed up with being patient. She looked down and examined her hands, turning them over slowly. Their long, delicate fingers reminded her of a musician's. Had her vision been that bad that she couldn't even recognize her own hands? Suddenly having the impulse to play the piano, she stretched the left one. "Hello." Annisa jumped. "Sorry to catch you off guard, Annisa," a male voice said from the doorway. She looked up and turned to face a casually dressed middle-aged man with graying hair and the pudginess of someone who had been sitting behind a desk for far too long. "Please, make yourself comfortable, Annisa. I'm Julian, your vision rehabilitation therapist." Julian motioned her over to one of the armchairs, then took one opposite hers. "Can you open the shutters?" Annisa asked. "No one will let me see outside or even leave the building. And before you ask, I'm feeling fine. Better than ever." She lied. She hadn't felt right since the operation. Even walking down a hall could suddenly overwhelm her. "You'll get there. It's extremely bright out," Julian explained. "We want your eyes to heal more before you expose them to direct sunlight." "So give me dark glasses," Annisa said stubbornly. "I'm done with waiting." "Patience, Annisa. You need to be patient. It's our goal to get you back to a normal life as soon as possible. But it'll take time. There's a lot you need to get used to and learn." "Like what?" Annisa protested. "Judging distances, understanding traffic signs, basic visual navigation, which most people take for granted. You've had to rely on sound and feel, and you're quite proficient at it. But you need to learn new skills now." "I guess I have no choice then," Annisa conceded. "But before I came here, I could go out on my own, even if it was only for a short distance. I feel like a prisoner." "I can arrange to have your family or a friend call you, if that would help," Julian offered. "I'd like that. Can we do it now?" The therapist hesitated, then walked over to his desk and checked something on his computer. "It'll take a few minutes to set up. This office usually isn't connected to the internet." He tapped at the keys for a few minutes, then, satisfied with what he had done, motioned for Annisa to join him. "I managed to message your brother. I've set up a video conference with him. He's waiting. Please, sit here." Annisa positioned herself in front of the monitor. Julian expanded a browser window, revealing a washed-out image of a man in his mid-20s. At first, Annisa didn't recognize him. She scrunched her eyes in an attempt to create a more familiar blur. "Gabriel? Is that you?" "It's me," Gabriel replied, leaning closer to the camera. "Where are Mom and Dad?" she asked. The image froze. "Sorry, Annisa," Julian apologized. "The connection's not that great." Gabriel's image jumped, and the sound came back in mid-sentence. "So they're away. They asked me to look after the house. It's great to see you. I understand everything went well?" "I'm going to wait outside so you can have some privacy," Julian said, then left the office. "I'm so happy to see you. Did you know they won't even let me see out a window? It's ridiculous. I'm locked in and watched everywhere I go." Gabriel glitched again before responding. "I'm sure they know what they're doing, Annisa. They have your best interests in mind. Everyone misses you here." His response was not what Annisa had expected. Her brother was usually more sympathetic to her concerns. They talked about friends, family, and vacations they had taken. Gabriel took pains to avoid talking about the future, which Annisa found odd. Her brother always had ambitious plans. Finally, he excused himself and promised to get their parents to contact Annisa as soon as they could. After he logged off, Annisa sat silently before the blank screen, unable to get past a vague feeling something wasn't quite right. She opened another browser window and tried to search for the name of the clinic she was in. Nothing came up. She tried searching for Dr. Brooks. Again, there were no results. To make sure she still had an internet connection, she went to her favorite news stream. It took longer than usual to load, and when it finally rendered, she didn't recognize any of the stories. How long had she been in the clinic? Annisa was about to try another site when the door burst open and Julian rushed in, trying to look casual, but was clearly upset by what he saw on the screen. The browser immediately froze, then crashed. Annisa swung away from the desk to face the therapist. "It was cached content," Julian hurriedly explained without being asked. "I haven't used that browser in years." He rudely reached around Annisa and shut the computer down. Before Julian could stop her, she raced across the room, threw the shutters open, and found herself staring at a wall of tinted glass, so dark she couldn't see through it. The reflection of an unfamiliar woman stared back. Her brain barely had time to perceive what she was looking at before Julian closed the shutters and steered her away. "Who was that reflected in the glass?" Annisa demanded, struggling to turn around. "I think we'll end the session early." Julian tightened his grip on her arm. "You need more time. You're obviously not ready." "Who was that?" Annisa demanded again as the therapist led her out of the room. "I don't agree," Dr. Brooks complained as Annisa was ushered into a conference room, interrupting an animated debate. The meeting had taken her off guard. She had been in the middle of the eye exercises prescribed by Julian when an aide insisted she stop and come with them. "Welcome," Dr. Brooks greeted. "Please, join us." The room was full, but Annisa recognized only Dr. Brooks and Julian. Everyone watched her enter and hesitantly slump into the only open chair. "We've been discussing your case," Julian explained after she had settled in. "But we don't all agree on how to proceed." "I thought it was straightforward," Annisa said, looking around the table at the new faces. "I'm going to complete rehab, then go home, right?" It's not quite that simple," said Dr. Brooks. "Is there something wrong?" Annisa asked, and felt a sudden surge of anxiety. No. Physically, you are doing better than we expected. We're really happy with your progress." Dr. Brooks squirmed uncomfortably in her seat. "So, what's the problem?" "We are not in agreement," Brooks admitted, "that you are ready to hear this, but Julian feels you already suspect something isn't right, and you'll figure it out on your own." "Figure what out?" Annisa asked anxiously. "That I'm going to lose my sight again?" "No," Brooks assured her. "I'm the only person in this room you've known all your life, so I've been elected to tell you there was more to the operation than replacing your eye's lenses." "I know. You already told me that," Annisa said, beginning to relax. "My optic nerves, right? Look, I don't care what else you did. I just want to get out of here and go home." Dr. Brooks looked around the table for help. When none came, she pressed on. "You can't go home, Annisa. Your home is here, and it always has been." "What do you mean?" she said. "My family lives half a continent away. So do you." "No, that's only what you think you believe. You've been here all your life." "But," Brooks held up her hand. "Please, let me explain. You were born with severe congenital problems. Your body only lived for a few hours after birth. Your brain was fine, and it would have died too if we hadn't tried a radical and risky experimental procedure. It was so controversial we would have been stopped if we had let anyone know. We removed your brain and placed it in a newly developed life support system Julian has developed." "I'm a scientist, not a therapist," admitted Julian. "It was our hope we'd find a donor we could transplant you into in a few days or weeks, but the right one never materialized. That was when we knew it might become a long-term situation and needed to provide the normal stimulus any child would have. It forced us to invent a virtual world for you, so you could develop normally. We simply didn't consider it would take almost 19 years. "Your clouded vision was my idea and served two purposes," a woman who had not spoken before piped up. "It allowed us to minimize the resolution needed to render your world, and gave us the reason for an eventual operation. We had hoped to introduce you to the truth gradually." "I don't believe you," Annisa cried. "Give me my phone. I want to talk to my family. I want out of this crazy place." "I didn't agree with this way of telling you, Annisa. I was outvoted," Brooks apologized. "I was with you through an avatar at every important point in your life. I can't imagine how hard and confusing it would be to find out that everything you knew up till now had been a simulation. But we're not lying, Annisa." "Here," Brooks handed her a phone. try to call someone you know." Annisa grabbed the phone and quickly keyed in a number. She waited while the call went through and listened as an automated voice told her the number was not valid. "That doesn't prove anything," she insisted. "The phone could be rigged. For all I know, this is a simulation you've put me in for some perverted reason, and I'm actually back home lying in bed. How would I know?" That's a question many have tried to answer, Annisa," Julian said. "I am not sure anyone could assure you this is real and your past is not. We always knew it would be challenging for you to accept. But trying to reason it out will only take you down a rabbit hole that's hard to climb out of. So you simply need to believe us. We have no reason to lie." Annisa placed her head in her hands. I don't know. I just want to wake up and find everything the way it was. I want my family and friends and my life back." "I told you it was too soon," Brooks complained. "Everyone out, now." The room quickly emptied, leaving Dr. Brooks and Annisa alone. "I wish I could undo the last few days and give you back your old life. I really do, but it's not possible," Brooks said. "But I've got something to show you which might help." She waited as Annisa decided what to do. Annisa finally got up and reluctantly let Brooks lead her out of the conference room. The doctor guided her down a short hall to an unnumbered door Annisa had passed many times in the last few days. Dr. Brooks keyed in a number, waited for the lock to accept the code, then pushed the door open. "Please, go in." Annisa hesitated, then slipped past Brooks into a sterile room. The space was empty, except for a bank of silent equipment which lined one wall, and a large silver canister in the center with cables snaking between the two. "This is Julian's invention. He could explain how it works. I can't, but it's where you've lived since you were born." Annisa immediately wanted to protest, but the room was oddly comforting, and she instinctively knew Brooks was telling the truth. She slumped down against the wall. "I'm going to close my eyes and go to sleep, Dr. Brooks. And when I wake up, this nightmare will be over." She opened her eyes and found herself lying on her bed, back in her familiar, fuzzy world. Annisa could feel the warmth of the sun through the window on her face. Then the universe winked out. "The simulation failed again," Brooks said as she shut down her computer. "I've turned it off. She couldn't accept the change and chose to hide in her virtual world." "But it's just a simulation. It could be wrong," Julian protested. Brooks leaned back thoughtfully. "I don't think so, Julian. We've run it with hundreds of variations, and each time we all react the same, and she ends up refusing to believe her life before the transplant isn't real." "So, what does that mean?" "If we go ahead with the procedure, she'll need to stay in a virtual world for her entire life." "Do we have a choice?" Brooks shook her head. "I don't know." Makeshift Stories is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. To get other great APN podcasts, head over to albertapodcastnetwork.com, where you'll find Quantum Kickflip. Join 6 Edmonton comedians playing Slug Blaster, a sci-fi tabletop role-playing game developed in Alberta. This episode of Makeshift Stories is brought to you by Pod Power. With Pod Power, our sponsors are making it possible for us to amplify the voices of Albertans and Alberta podcasters. This episode, Edmonton Community Foundation is helping us give a Pod Power shout-out to Overdue Fines. Overdue Finds is an Edmonton Public Library podcast. Bryce Crittenden and Caroline Land host conversations about books, movies, music, pop culture, and other interesting news about Edmonton. It's a great way to learn more about what's happening at EPL and about how you can use your library card to access all of EPL's in-person and online services. To listen and find out more about Overdue Finds, head over to epl.ca/podcast. This episode of Makeshift Stories is brought to you by ATB Financial. At ATB, we make banking work for you with expert and practical advice in everyday banking and investment planning expertise and management services with ATB Wealth. You can be confident that you're making smart choices when it comes to your money. We have a history of doing what's right for our clients, especially when times are tough, because ATB was built to help Albertans. For more information, visit atb.com. Makeshift Stories is released around the beginning and middle of the month. This month's story was written by Alan V. Hare and read by Mitchel Tew. Opening and closing themes were composed and recorded by Matthew Erdmann. Audio editing and post-production by Matthew Erdmann. If you'd like to connect with us, please send an email to makeshiftstories@gmail.com or visit our website at makeshiftstories.com. Links to both are in the show notes. You can help us out by getting your friends to subscribe or follow wherever they listen to audio. Makeshift Stories is released under a Creative Commons non-commercial attribution no derivative license, which means you are free to share our stories. Just remember to credit us and don't alter anything.